Welcome back. This is episode 4 in a series titled Revelation Reality, the Victory of Jesus. I'm Julie McAllen, along with Rob Pike. And before we begin, we just want to remind you that each episode in this series builds upon information presented in the previous video. So if you're just tuning in for the first time, you'll find a link below in the to the playlist, and it'll take you to the beginning of the series, and you can choose to watch any episodes you might have missed. So, Rob, in our last episode, we began elaborating on the reasons why we can know that the revelation to John was written prior to the destruction of Jerusalem. And we have more to present in this episode. So, what do we have in store for our viewers today, Rob?
Well, I know we mentioned last week that we would continue with the internal evidence that the revelation was written prior to the destruction of Jerusalem. And to begin again with this, I'd like to point out what Adam Clarke, Bible commentator, had to say about that in the very first verse in the book. Let's read it once again. This time we'll read it from the King James, since it was the only Bible translation that was available for general use in his day, which is about 200 years ago. It says, "The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John." Now, Adam Clarke states in the first part of this verse that it came from the Greek word apocalypsis, as we've already mentioned before. And he says, it is here that this revelation or discovery of hidden things was given by God to Jesus Christ, that Christ gave it to his angel, that his angel showed it to John, and that John sent it to the churches. Then he references another colleague of his, a theologian named Jacob Wettstein, when he says, "For if the book were written before the destruction of Jerusalem, and the prophecies in it relate to that destruction, and the civil wars among the Romans, which lasted but 3 or 4 years, then it might be said that the revelation is of things which must shortly come to pass. But if we consider the book as referring to the state of the church in the ages, the words here and those in Revelation 1:3 must be understood of the commencement of the events predicted, as if he had said, in a short time, the train of these visions will be put in motion." Julie, what do you see with the problem with this statement from Wettstein?
Well, Wettstein is proposing that the revelation could be referring to the state of the church throughout the ages, and therefore he puts it in a distant future. But, keeping in mind that this message was sent to the 7 churches in Asia, was there anything on the horizon that was beyond AD 70 that would qualify for all the events written in the book? And since he referenced Revelation 1:3, there it states that the time was at hand. Wouldn't the original audience have surmised from the urgency of the message that these things were ready to happen, Rob? I mean, isn't that what at hand means?
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. I mean, if you're going to say something is at hand, you can reach out and touch it. That's what it means.
Right.
And we've already pointed out that in Revelation 11, John was given a measuring rod and told to go measure a specific part of the temple. This could not be done if the temple was not in existence. And one point which I see as important is the fact that it was written only to the 7 churches. Now, considering the way Christianity spread quickly after the end of Old Covenant Israel, it seems totally illogical that this would be addressed only to those churches if it was to be concluded thousands of years later. I mean, you'd think there'd be something in there that would say, for all of the churches throughout time, or something like that. Right. And considering all the internal evidence for an early date, where is the internal evidence for a late date? Do you see any such evidence, Julie?
Right. No, no. And not when we consider all the times that the book mentions the nearness of the time. Again, like you said, the apostle to whom this revelation was given clearly expected the prophecy to be fulfilled during his own lifetime. And while we're considering the internal evidence for the dating of the book of Revelation, I think we should consider the seven-headed, ten-horned beast, ten-horned beast that's mentioned in Revelation 13:1.
Yes.
Note this, and the dragon stood on the sand of the seashore. Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 diadems, and on his heads were blasphemous names. I know that there are commentators who would say that this is a reference to 7 world monarchies: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, and then to future dynasties hundreds of years into the future. But how does this relate when we consider the purpose as outlined in the very opening of the book? I
Yeah.
mean, why would the Apostle John tell these first century Christians who were suffering greatly from the persecution from the Jews and the Romans that they needed to think about the history of the world powers and then speculate on future powers? I mean, think about it. Would this be of any interest to them? It's worth considering that if this is written to a first century audience with events described as being at hand, is it possible that the beast outlined in Revelation 13:1 was also a first century figure? What do you think?
Well, first of all, Daniel, the prophet Daniel, spoke of things that was going to happen later on in the future, but there was a reason for that. The Messiah was coming, a very important reason. There's no reason why these people here would be looking forward to something to happen thousands of years later. I mean, there's just no reason for that. And for all the reasons we've discussed so far. And in Revelation 17, 1-6, John gets specific about that seven-headed beast. And then in verses 9-11, the interpreting angel gives the meaning of the seven-headed beast. Notice the words that he says. Says, here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits, and they are 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come, and when he comes, he must remain a little while. The beast which was and is not is himself also an 8th, and is one of the 7, and he goes to destruction. There are 2 theories about which city is being spoken of here, because there are 2 cities spoken of in the book of Revelation that have 7 hills. Isn't that right, Julie?
Right. Both Rome and Jerusalem are said to be sitting on 7 hills. Let's read that first part again, what you
Okay.
had.
All right.
Revelation 17:9. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. So some might take this as a reference to the city of Rome because it has been universally recognized as the city of 7 hills. But if you look this up, you'll find that these hills even have names, but so does Jerusalem. They are frequently mentioned by ancient writers from many different and varied backgrounds. Right, Rob?
Yeah, in fact, if you Google it, you can find pictorial layouts of both the 7 hills of Rome and the 7 hills of Jerusalem. So how do we know which is being spoken of here? Well, let's continue to see what it states. It says, and they are 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come, and when he does come, he must remain a little while. That's pretty specific, isn't it, Julie?
Yeah. Remember, John wrote the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. And then he says they are 7 kings.
Yeah.
So it appears he's describing 7 emperors during his time frame. He said 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must remain a little while. So we should probably consider the lineup of emperors. So number one,
I agree.
Julius Caesar, 49 to 44 BC. Number two, Augustus Caesar, 31 BC to 14 AD. Three, Tiberius Caesar, 14 to 37 AD. Gaius Caesar, 37 to 41 AD. Claudius, 41 to 54 AD. Nero, 54 to 68 AD. Galba, June of 68 AD to January 69 AD. So John said five had fallen. Look over that list. You got
Yeah.
Julius, Augustus, Tiberius, Gaius, and Claudius. Then he said one is, meaning his present time. That would be Nero at the time John was writing this. And then he wrote that one is yet to come, and when he comes, he must remain a little while. Well, this was most likely Galba, or however you pronounce it. Although there were two others in that same year. You had Galba, Otho, and Vitellius all reigned during the year of AD 69. Then Vespasian won out and ruled for about 10 years.
Yeah, Julie, I just have to say that from a historical perspective, it also matches up with the account of the Wars of the Jews written by Josephus. For we know that Vespasian, who was a general in the Roman army, went to Jerusalem to destroy the city, but had to stop this effort and retract his forces back to Rome in order to fight the civil war for the position of emperor. And history records that he won out over Galba and others during that civil war. And then after he became emperor, he sent his son Titus back to Jerusalem to finish the job. Isn't that right?
Right. And Josephus in the Antiquities of the Jews confirms this line of kings because he calls Tiberius the third emperor and Gaius, who's sometimes called Caius, the fourth emperor. But in the same year, until Vespasian won, there were two others. Book 4 of the War of the Jews shows us that Vespasian slaughtered Vitellius and his whole army. And this was the last battle to be won prior to his becoming emperor. With these considerations in mind, it appears very evident that the book of Revelation had to be written prior to June 8th, AD 68. That's the day that Nero committed suicide. But there's still even more to consider, isn't there, Rob?
Yes, thanks for those references, Julie. And we know that many times history portrays Augustus as the first emperor. But as you said, Josephus was living at that time in the first century. And from what we see is the fact that Julius Caesar was truly considered the first emperor in his day. And thus an accurate portrayal of the emperors must include him at the beginning. But there's one more thing in chapter 13 that we need to consider, but I hesitate to mention it because this one thing has been abused by so many people throughout the years, and that is the dreaded mark of the beast. But with the information that we are about to present, I feel confident that we can actually show the truth about this. So here is a passage, the controversial passage that has existed and caused a lot of trouble throughout the ages. But I think we can show something very important about it. It's Revelation 13:18. It says, "Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. Yes, here we have it, Julie, the dreaded mark of the beast. And when I said I hesitate to mention it, you know the reason is because all the names of the people that have been tried to be attached to it over the years. I know several world leaders have said to have had the mark of the beast in the last 50 years or so, including a couple of American presidents. Even Pope Benedict at one time was called the beast, had the mark of the beast. But now we're about to present some pretty strong evidence, and I know that a great many scholars have concluded that the Emperor Nero fits with the referent of 666. So if we look at the Hebrew spelling of the name, we come to the same conclusion, don't we, Julie?
Yeah. You're right about that speculation about 666. It's all over the place. But why didn't John just come out and name Nero? I mean, here you're saying historians have proposed that it's Nero. Why didn't he just say it? Well, instead of using his name, he used a number, because we have to remember the Christians were enduring persecution. And this revelation of unfolding events had to be signified or shown as signs, as some of the translations have shown. That's why the King James Version states Revelation 1:1 this way: the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass, and he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John.
That's right, Julie. And I'm going to interrupt here for a little bit because I'm really glad you brought this up. I just want to add some confirmation of what you said because I think it's very important. I'd like to point out that both the Rotherham version and Young's literal both confirm this. Notice what they state. First, we'll look at the Rotherham. It says, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to point out unto his servants things which must come to pass with speed. And he shewed them by signs, sending through his messenger unto the servant John. So there it signifies it right there, sent to them by signs. And then from Young's literal, it says, a revelation of Jesus Christ that God gave him to show his servants what things behoveth to come quickly, or to come to pass quickly, and he did signifying it, having sent it through his messenger to his servant John. So with this in mind, will you please continue with what you were saying? I mean, I'm sorry to have interrupted you, but I just wanted to add some confirmation there.
Yeah, and thanks for that confirmation. It's important because we need to know why we have so much symbolic language in this book. So back to the mark of the beast being signified with 666, why that number, and how was it determined to be Nero? Well, the first century Hebrew spelling of the name Nero using English letters is NRWNQSR, pronounced Neron Kaiser. Archaeologists have noted that this spelling gives us the precise value of 666. This has been noted by many, as we shall show. So now we see that the Hebrew form of Nero's name relates to Nero Caesar. So it not only fits numerically, but it also fits right into the context of the seven kings as the one who is reported by John.
Yes, and just to name a few sources where you can find this analogy, we look in Moses Stewart's Commentary in Apocalypse, F.J. Hort's The Apocalypse of St. John, Marcus Jastrow's Dictionary of the Targum, J. Stuart Russell's book, The Parousia, Dr. Hiller's article entitled Revelation 13:18 and a scroll from the Mirabat, taken from the Bulletin of American Schools of Oriental Research, just to name a few of the many who hold to this belief. Julie, I could literally mention several others.
Wow,
So,
that's great. Those are good resources. Thank you,
yeah,
Rob, for that. So when we look at the character of the beast, John likens it to three very fearsome carnivorous animals in Revelation 13:2. He says, and the beast that I saw was like a leopard, its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. Does this fit the Emperor Nero? Well, history reports he viciously murdered his own mother, brother, aunt, and wife. He was also known as a molester and a cruel tyrant. This man used to cover Christians in a vest of candle wax and light it for his own amusement. He also murdered several prominent Roman citizens prior to his own suicide in AD 68. Nero could definitely qualify as a beast.
wow.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine anybody that's that sick, but he obviously was.
Right. And then committed suicide. So, he was a very troubled person, it sounds like.
Yeah. And finally, with regard to the beast, we see that Nero qualifies from verses 5 through 8 of that chapter, where we find the following. This is Revelation, the 13th chapter, verses 5 through 8. It says, "And there was given to it a mouth speaking great things and evil speakings. And there was given to it authority to make war for 42 months. And it did open its mouth for evil speaking toward God, to speak evil of his name and of his tabernacle and of those who in the heaven tabernacle. And there was given to it to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And there was given to it authority over every tribe and tongue and nation. And bow before it shall all who are dwelling upon the land, whose names have not been written in the scroll of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world." This is from Revelation 13, verse 5 through 8 in Young's literal translation. This speaks to Nero's blasphemous nature, for we know that Nero had even had coins minted with images of his own radiating sunlight, stating this was done to imitate the sun god Apollo when he said, "The all-powerful Nero Caesar, Sebastos, a new Apollo." And he required that people address him as a god and worship him.
Wow. Sounds like he was the ultimate narcissist.
Yes,
And regarding
absolutely.
what's that?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. And regarding what it states in verse 7, we know that from the historical records that Nero initially began his assault on the Christians when he blamed them for setting Rome on fire in AD 64. He committed suicide, like I said, in June of AD 68. So that's roughly 3.5 years right there, thus fulfilling the mandate that the beast would wage war with the saints for 42 months. Rob, the fulfillment recorded in history here is really remarkable, isn't it?
Yes, I was just going to say that. And having said all of that, we know that there are some, even in the community of believers of fulfilled eschatology, who think that this could all be wrong because of what says in the following verse. It says, "And I saw one of its heads as slain to death, and its deadly stroke was healed, and all the earth did wonder after the beast." So, Julie, what we have to realize here is that the beast has a twofold identity, which can shift corporately between Rome and the political entity, and the ruler of Rome, who would specifically, in this case, be Nero. This perfectly fits with the fact that the entire Roman Empire was in chaos and out of control after Nero's suicide because of the civil war which was happening. And in book 4 of the Wars of the Jews, Josephus records that this civil war shook the entire foundations of the empire. He stated, "So upon this confirmation of Vespasian's entire government, which was now settled, and upon the unexpected deliverance of the public affairs of the Romans from ruin, Vespasian turned his thoughts to what remained unsubdued in Judea." And this is from the Wars of the Jews, book 4, chapter 11, section 5. This confirms that after the horrendous civil war, the Roman Empire was indeed revived under the reign of Vespasian.
Wow. So let me review what we just related here. I think it's important in determining the date of the of this prophecy that was given to John. So we see that Emperor Nero lived in a time frame that fits. That's from Revelation 1, 1 and 3. His empire fits, having risen from the sea with power and authority, as shown in Revelation 13, 1 through 4. He exhibited a beastly character, as shown in these same verses, and he appeared in the chronology of the emperors or 7 kings, shown in Revelation 17:10, as we covered in great detail, starting with Julius Caesar. It definitely looks like we have an amazing amount of internal evidence of the time of the writing, doesn't it, Rob?
Yeah, and when you add it all up, it's pretty compelling, don't you think, Julie?
Yeah. Um, but now, as we've come to the end of this episode, I'm just stunned by everything. But when we return, we're going to look at the external evidence for
Yes.
the early dating of the book. So until the next time, I would like to encourage any of our new viewers to subscribe to this channel so you'll be notified of upcoming episodes. And do you have any final remarks, Rob?
Yeah, just like always, I'd like to say to all of you, may God's grace be with you always, and have a great day. And Julie?
Yeah, and keep yourselves in God's love. Bye-bye.
Amen. Have a great day.
You too, Rob.